The peaceful Cleveland suburb, where children used to chatter on their way to school and neighbors exchanged greetings over neatly trimmed hedges, was now engulfed in eerie silence. Abandoned cars stood frozen in the middle of the streets like iron ghosts. The wind drove yellowed leaves and scraps of newspaper across the asphalt, and no sound came from the house windows. No music, no conversations, no children's laughter. 3-year-old golden Labrador Bailey had shiny fur of a warm honey shade and kind brown eyes. Usually an energetic and cheerful dog with an ever-wagging tail, he now lay by the front door, pressing his muzzle against the cool floor. His sensitive nose detected how his owner's scent was growing fainter and fainter with each passing hour. Dim light filtered through the broken living room window, creating strange patterns on the floor that were occasionally interrupted by shadows of something moving outside. 3 days. It had been 3 days since Jack last checked his suit in the mirror. Bailey remembered how his owner, following their usual tradition, had consulted with him about choosing a tie, and the dog, as always, had touched the yellow one with his nose, that special one that matched the color of his own fur. The house felt alien without the familiar sounds of his owner's footsteps and the rustle of the morning newspaper. Instead, unfamiliar sounds from the street broke the silence: screams, distant rumbling, and sometimes sharp sounds that made Bailey's ears flatten against his head. His nose picked up new, worrying smells that seeped through the broken window, the result of someone's nighttime shooting. The empty bowl in the corner of the kitchen was a reminder of hunger. Although Bailey had already managed to explore every corner of the house and even succeeded in opening the cabinet to get all the food supply, now there was no trace of it left. The broken window in the living room beckoned with new smells and sounds, offering a way outside. And somewhere out there, among these unfamiliar aromas, was hidden the one, Jack's scent, which called Bailey to search. Hunger finally overcame fear. Bailey carefully made his way through the broken window, trying not to touch the sharp glass shards protruding from the edges. His paws silently touched the ground, and for the first time in 3 days, he found himself under the open sky. The bright midday sun momentarily blinded his eyes, making him squint. The familiar route to Jack's office led past dozens of identical houses. Previously at this time, dogs would greet him with cheerful barking from behind fences, and Mrs. Henderson would always treat him with cookies. Now the yards were empty, and no sound came from the windows. Even the birds seemed to have abandoned this place. Passing by the park where he and Jack often played ball, Bailey noticed that the swings were motionless, and abandoned toys lay scattered on the playground. The fountain where he loved to drink water had dried up, with fallen leaves swirling in its basin. At the intersection with Maple Street, he had to navigate around abandoned cars. Some doors were wide open, as if people had been in a great hurry to leave. The smell of panic that remained in the car interiors made the fur on his neck stand up. Block after block, street after street, the world seemed desolate. Bailey had been walking for almost an hour, but his nose unerringly followed his owner's faint scent. He passed broken store windows, overturned mailboxes, and scattered belongings, trying not to pay attention to the dark stains on the sidewalks. When a large supermarket appeared ahead, Bailey's paws were already feeling tired from the long journey. Suddenly, his attention was drawn to movement between the abandoned shopping carts. A human figure was slowly shuffling across the parking lot. Bailey's heart beat joyfully. Could it be Jack? He was ready to run forward when his nose caught something wrong. A sharp, unnatural smell of death and decay made him freeze in place. Somewhere in the distance came the anxious growling of other dogs. They too sensed the danger. The creature turned, and Bailey saw its eyes, cloudy, devoid of life. It reached out toward him with crooked fingers, but the dog was already backing away, memorizing this peculiar scent, the smell of walking death. Around it lay bloody remnants of what had once been people, But Bailey already knew now was not the time to think about horrors. He had to find Jack. Pine Valley Business Park loomed before Bailey as a gray concrete block. The once bustling office center was now engulfed in semi-darkness. The doors were wide open, and through them came sounds. Those same shuffling sounds he had already learned to recognize. Bailey froze, listening. 1, 2, maybe 3 sources of sound. The creatures with extinguished eyes were inside. The dog silently slipped into the hall, staying close to the walls. His claws noiselessly touched the marble floor. Years of walks with Jack had taught him to move quietly when needed. The electricity wasn't working, and the only light came through the large windows, creating islands of safety between deep shadows. Stairs to the second floor. Bailey froze beside them, ears perked up. Shuffling sounds came from above. Someone was slowly moving down the corridor. The dog pressed himself against the wall, waiting. The sound was moving away, and after a moment Bailey began to climb, carefully placing his paws between scattered papers to avoid making noise. On the second floor, Jack's scent became stronger, but mixed with that disgusting smell of death. Bailey froze around the corner. A creature with extinguished eyes, once resembling Mr. Johnson from accounting, stood with its back to him, swaying in place. The door to Jack's office was only a few meters away from it. The dog felt his hackles rise, but fear for his master was stronger than his survival instinct. Pressing against the wall, he began to slowly move forward, holding his breath. One careless sound, and the creature would notice him. Jack's office looked as if a fight had taken place there. An overturned chair, scattered document folders, a broken computer screen. On the desk, among shards of glass, lay an overturned photo frame, them with Jack at a picnic last summer, his master laughing, hugging Bailey's neck, with the lake visible in the background. Bailey froze, looking at the photo. He remembered that day, the warm wind, the smell of grilled meat, the cool water splashes when he and Jack went swimming. His master had thrown the stick for him all day, and in the evening, they watched the sunset together. The memory was so vivid that for a moment it seemed, if he just turned around, Jack would be there again, smiling and happy. In the corner, Bailey noticed his water bowl, the same one he always drank from during their shared workdays. But most importantly, Jack's scent was stronger here, fresher. His master had been here very recently. Suddenly, something yellow caught his attention near the office exit. The tie, that same favorite one. It lay on the floor with dark stains visible on it. Bailey carefully sniffed them. Blood, but not Jack's. His heart beat faster. His master was alive when he left this place. Shuffling sounds came from the corridor. They were getting closer. Grabbing the tie in his teeth, the dog silently slipped through the emergency exit. A new scent led him further, and this time the trail was much fresher. The afternoon sun cast long shadows on the deserted streets as Bailey continued his journey. The yellow tie in his teeth still held his master's faint scent, the only thing connecting him to Jack. The dog's heart ached with each new sign of destruction he saw. What if somewhere out there, amid this chaos, something terrible had happened to Jack? The thought of life without his master caused Bailey almost physical pain. The streets became increasingly cluttered. Bailey had to carefully navigate between abandoned cars, occasionally freezing and sniffing the air. Every broken window, every blood stain on the asphalt, made his heart clench with fear for Jack. He had already learned to distinguish different scents of this new world, the sharp stench of gasoline, the metallic taste of blood, and that special one, the smell of walking death that made his fur stand on end. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound ahead. Bailey instantly pressed himself to the ground, hiding behind a mangled sedan. From around the corner emerged a group of creatures with extinguished eyes, 3 or 4 of them, slowly shuffling along the asphalt, swaying as if drunk. Watching them, Bailey felt panic rising in his chest. What if he had become one of them? The very thought was unbearable. The dog gripped the tie tighter in his teeth. No, not Jack, not his Jack. When the sound of their footsteps faded away, Bailey carefully peered out and froze. Ahead, several blocks away, he saw Jack's car. His heart beat faster. But the experience of recent hours had taught him to be cautious. Loneliness and fear of losing his master gnawed at him from within. But he had to keep moving. Slowly, using every possible hiding spot, he began to move forward. His master's scent was growing stronger, mixing with something troubling. At the turn of a side street, Bailey finally saw Jack's car up close. The vehicle had crashed into a lamppost, its hood crumpled and windshield covered in a web of cracks. Black skid marks on the asphalt told the story of the final seconds. Jack had tried to avoid colliding with something or someone. Scattered headlight debris and tiny glass shards indicated that the accident had happened very recently. But worst of all, that same wrong smell was getting stronger. Bailey froze, gripping the tie tighter in his teeth. The fear of loneliness, which he had tried to suppress throughout the journey, now threatened to consume him completely. Bailey slowly approached Jack's car. His paws trembled from exhaustion and fear of what he might see. His master's scent was so strong, so close, and so still. Inside, behind the wheel, he saw a familiar figure. Jack sat motionless, his head resting on his chest. Blood had dried on his temple, where he had hit the steering wheel, and the suit he had worn to work was torn and stained. His right arm hung unnaturally, broken from the impact. A shadow of pain was frozen on his face, the last expression Jack took with him. Bailey's heart clenched with pain so sharp it took his breath away. He whimpered softly, feeling his entire world crumbling in this moment. All those morning rituals when Jack would consult with him about which tie to choose, always knowing Bailey would pick the yellow one. The warm hugs after returning from work, when his master smelled of fresh coffee and his favorite cologne. The joyful games with the ball in the park, where Jack laughed so genuinely that his eyes turned into happy slits. The cozy evenings by the fireplace, when Bailey would rest his head on Jack's lap, and Jack would absently scratch behind his ears while absorbed in reading. Their long Sunday walks when they could wander the neighborhood for hours, and Jack would tell him about his plans and dreams. All these little moments of happiness that seemed so ordinary, now they had turned into painful memories that tore at his heart. None of this would ever happen again. No more gentle voice calling him for breakfast. No more playful games with the favorite yellow tie in front of the mirror. No more warm hand patting his head, comforting him during storms. Carefully, still holding the yellow tie in his teeth, Bailey jumped onto the passenger seat, his usual place next to his master. How many times had they ridden together like this? How many mornings had started right here, with a cheerful drive to work, when Jack would sing along with the radio and Bailey would happily wag his tail to the beat? How many times had he watched his master's confident hands turn the wheel, guiding their way through morning traffic? Now those hands lay motionless, and Bailey felt something break in his heart. He could leave. He could try to find another place with food and shelter. Maybe there were still good people out there somewhere. But the thought of walking through this new, horrifying world alone, without Jack, was unbearable. How could he abandon the one who had never abandoned him? No, it was better to stay here, next to his master. Even if Jack would never pat his head again, never scratch behind his ears, never call him to play ball, just being near him was better than wandering alone among the horrors of this new world. The sun was slowly setting, painting the car's interior in warm honey tones. A dark silhouette floated past the window, another creature with extinguished eyes shuffling by, not noticing them. Once such a sight would have made Bailey's heart pound wildly with fear, but now, Now he felt only the unbearable pain of loss tearing at his chest. Bailey carefully placed the tie on Jack's lap and rested his head against the armrest. Silence filled the car, broken only by the distant sounds of the dying city. The muffled echo of footsteps, the ring of breaking glass, sometimes terrifying screams. He didn't take his eyes off his master's face. The creatures could circle around the car, could scratch at the windows with their crooked fingers. It didn't matter anymore. In a world where even the sun seemed cold and alien, where familiar streets had turned into labyrinths of horror, the only refuge remained this place, next to Jack. And Bailey knew, even when darkness would engulf the city, and the only sounds would be the footsteps of those who were once people, he wouldn't go anywhere. He would stay here, beside his master. He was home.